I'm a youth worker and I work for an organization called Joseph Torino. A situation that was important for my personal growth is actually related to the project of YOCOMO, because I had a task to ask for feedback from my colleagues and work on self-assessment. And I've always had problems with assessment because self-assessment has always become for me a form of self-harassment in a way, and from others, some form of judgment. So I could not separate feedback on my behavior from judgment on me as a person. So when I had to work on it and I had to get prepared for it, I actually discovered that I can take it, first of all, that it can be good for me on a professional level for sure, but especially on a personal level. It really, the whole process really made me grow as a person. And the attitudes that emerged were for sure active listening. So not just listening with open ears, but with an open heart and an open will, especially. And my inner readiness to receive feedback, which is related to the courage to receive as well. And for sure, self-awareness was also involved, and the ability to act authentically, because what happened was that I shared from the very beginning to my colleagues that I was super scared of the whole process, which helped building a good atmosphere for the task. Apart from the professional level, the results on a personal level are that I am for sure easier to work with in a way, but also being open to this process made me more balanced in life in a way and more capable to be ready for change. A major obstacle that I faced was related to EVS volunteers that we had a few years ago, that after a series of conflicts, plus some sort of cultural shock that she was experiencing, we got to a level of conflict where she threatened us to go back, which was, of course, a danger for the whole project. Even though we weren't particularly close or I wasn't so involved, I had to deal with it. And what happened is that we went for an honest communication process. So the attitudes that emerged there were the suspension of judgment, I would say, and again, active listening, because what happened was that I just listened to her and I shared what I was observing and how I felt. And that process of making me vulnerable in a way opened the possibility for an authentic and empathic communication and helped us in solving the situation. So we managed to build a safe space for the both of us. And the final result was that she decided to stay and to finish her project with us. So that was a success, I would say. To be honest, I can think of many times when I wanted to give up, but the most difficult one is related to my year of civic service, when I was working as a youth worker, but in a different context than my usual one, so with different people, with different rules. What happened was that a climate of mistrust and difficult communication was there, which added to some difficulties I had on a personal level, really led me on the verge of burnout. So what happened was that I managed to ask for help. So I started the path of Gestalt counseling. I really started working on my self-awareness, which is, I think, the key here, because what happened was that I wasn't aware of what was happening and I wasn't able to listen to my needs and to value them. After 4 years, I still know that I need to take care of how I deal with stress and I deal with conflict, and on my readiness to ask for support, which clashes with a cultural narrative of being a strong and independent woman who doesn't need any help. So working on those attitudes really helped me in finishing my year of service, try to learn how to communicate better and to also reflect on the importance of consistency in a way. I could think of many examples of this because I think it's a pattern in my life. The most recent one was that I was asked to become vice president in an organization I'm volunteering in. And my first reaction is always going into a panic mode because this triggers in me underestimation and insecurity and the feeling that I'm not ready and I will never be, some kind of imposter syndrome. And my first thoughts are that the person asking me to do that is making a mistake, that I will not be able to live up to that. And the first reaction is to say no all the time. Then what is really interesting is that I always end up saying yes. Probably I have the feeling that I do not feel entitled to say no sometimes, but the attitudes that I have to challenge there are for sure the fear of responsibility, the fear to make a mistake. There's some part of laziness, to be honest, but also the fear to leave my comfort zone, which triggers some anxiety in a way. And in order to get to the yes and to acceptance of the task, I really need to be reassured by the person asking me that I am the right person for that, and or that I will not be alone, in that I can count on someone else for some teamwork in helping me. I think the most interesting case is related to this local long-term volunteer that we had a couple of years ago that I used to see on a daily basis. And there was something that didn't feel quite right between us and made it difficult to trust each other and to work together. And for me to coach her, which was supposed to be my role, the challenges that I perceived, her attitudes, the way I saw them, were about a lack of authenticity and a very passive-aggressive tendency. And the reaction was to just put a wall there and put distance and just avoid any chance of confrontation. But what I understood, what I realized at some point, was that the actual point wasn't her attitudes per se, but was the fact that in those I could see my own attitudes mirrored, that really triggered some kind of self-hate response, because those are the attitudes that I really do not like and that I judge as negative. So the judgment I perceived was actually my own against myself. And that really made the attitude of self-awareness to emerge, and the value of authenticity and honest communication in order to avoid this very bad passive-aggressive response.